Hello and welcome back to E20 Zone TV. Listen, they love the tune, but we've got more important things to worry about than a bloody tune. But Athers, Charlie, I'm going to let you speak about this. Yeah, Issa Diop. Take it away. Which one of you want to go first about? I can't believe how bad we feel about Issa Diop getting injured. That's the madness of it.
Charlie, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Nah, you go first, bro.
Okay. It was always. I don't want to say it was always going to happen, but it just felt after January and what had happened, it felt like it was just bound to happen, and it was going to be in that specific position that it was going to happen, which is really, really unfortunate. It's shit. Nobody could have sort of seen it coming as it did at the weekend. It felt very innocuous. I remember seeing him at the end of the game and he came away from one of the short corners, I think it was, and he was limping. And I said at the time to Bex, I said, he looks like he's limping there. Right? Like he looks like he'd gone down for a bit. And the cameras, I don't think they actually showed him, but I do think he actually went down for a little bit. And I thought, oh God, if he's down, after what happened with Zuma, we're screwed. And it's annoying because I actually thought in that game at the weekend, I actually thought he was man of the match. I thought he had a fantastic performance. I thought he was brilliant in sort of last sort of midweek. We said how well he'd done. And he actually put together a couple of really good games. It was nice to see that consistency from him that we've not seen since his first season with us. You know, it's just a shame. But also it goes back to the failings in the transfer market and, you know, signing and getting a little bit more depth just in case something like this happened. And this is the difference, I guess, with, you know, top European teams. And listen, we know that Moyes, you know, may have been under some pressure or something else, or his own failings of not getting business done quick enough. But it's, you know, teams that compete in Europe, they have a plethora of players in each position that if one goes down, the other can come in. But it's not just that; it's the other top teams, the other teams in division. Likes of, let's take Leicester for example. Soyuncu or Fofana goes down at the start of the season. Their starter is centre back. They've got Soyuncu. They buy Vestergaard that can play there. You've also got Johnny Evans, Amate can play back there. You know, so it's like there's 5-6 different players that can play in that position in these top teams. So listen, there are benefits to having a smaller playing squad. There always are. But I think that the lack of rotation sometimes hasn't helped maybe the sort of fitness levels of other people. But then again, I think, well, Diop's not exactly played a lot of minutes this season. So is it that's done it? I don't know. Unfortunately, it can go one or two ways. I'll wrap up in a second so Charlie can speak about it. But unfortunately, it was having and operating with a small squad that basically spelled, and I said this at the time, it spelled the end of Marcelo Bielsa at Leeds because, you know, all of the injuries, and he loves to operate with a small squad, it bit him in the backside brutally, and unfortunately he lost his job for it. Obviously, the same thing's not going to happen here, but especially the last few weeks of the season, we've got 2 European semi-final games. We've got Arsenal, Chelsea and City, and it's more than likely, I know, James, you're of the opinion that Declan Rice should go back there. I'm still of the opinion that I think Alese should go back there because we can't lose what we've got in midfield, and I'm sure we'll get onto that. But this is such a difficult next month and a half until this season ends, and it's, like I say, that injury and that position. I mean, Craig Dawson's not fit either. He's been playing the entire season in pain, so it's difficult. But listen, it gives an opportunity for the young players, and it's either going to go one or two ways, and that is, oh my God, we're going to have to see the birth of a star, and Alesi's going to come in, or Baptiste's going to come in, and they're going to, you know, nail it straight away, and everyone's going to go, oh my God. Or in these games, they're not going to be able to cope and handle the pressure, and it could ultimately decide their future career at West Ham and further forward. So it's going to be a difficult few weeks, but it's it's not good, is it? It's not, and I don't. East side views again. I know he was doing it last week when we were doing the player ratings and stuff. Let's not. Yes, it's not ideal, and yes, there is some blame for Moyes. But come on, man, you're not telling me you're going to sack the man like a fortnight before the biggest game in the club's recent history. Just like leave it out till the end of the season.
Well, Charlie, I spoke to you since the other week, mate, when we discussed, I think it was Leon, and that amazing night. Since then, mate, we can't beat Burnley. And we find out Issa Diop's down and out, basically. And looks like that's the last game he ever plays in a West Ham shirt, let's be honest here. I don't think he's here next year. What's your thoughts on it?
I don't even... I said this to you just a second ago, but if you'd asked me to put a bet on what position this would have happened in, I wouldn't have said centre-back. I think we've actually got 4 first-team centre-backs, which is like that and right-back are the only 2 positions where we actually have any what feels like depth, like actual first-team quality depth. Like you can make arguments about central attacking midfielder, but certain people won't like Ben Brahma, certain people don't like Vasic and all this other stuff. Like legit just 4, and I know people have whatever conversation about Diop, but like 4 actual ones. So it's just very impressive that we've managed to run them into the crowd like this. It's just very efficient. Very efficient. You have to respect, if anything, the ruthlessness of it. Look, it sucks. It's horrible because realistically, I think the thing that upsets me most about it is I think he was just coming into form. The last sort of, I don't know how many games. Like I always say this whenever I come on here, you have the encyclopedic memory. I don't, but I feel like the last 4 games or so, at least, he started to really show elements of his game again and started to pick up. And especially in Europe, I thought he was immense. And then, it comes to this
last two games because Zuma went down at Brentford and then he had Leon on this weekend.
I think the Leon game just proved that he can do it under pressure. Diop. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause that's a big game, isn't it? Let's be honest. That's the biggest game. Every game in the Europa League from now on is just a massive game. Each one goes up another level. I think against Leon, he proved it there. And I do agree. He has sort of started to get, I wouldn't say back to his best, but he was getting there. And it's just...
Yeah, definitely.
To go down and out like the way he has is a choker. Do you know what I mean? What do you think then, Charlie, in regards of moving forward now? Because obviously he's out. Like me and Athers are going to agree and disagree on this one. I know we are, but for me, I'll go first, and I'll see what Charlie thinks, and I'll bring Athers in after. For me, it has to be Deck. I think there has to be. There is no choice. I don't think you can go and put Alese in there and hope that he's going to turn up and perform when you know Deck will perform. That's especially arguably in the biggest game in the recent history of West Ham. That's what I think on that. What do you think, Charlie?
I think for me personally, the answer is Alese. But for the reason, not necessarily because I agree with what you're saying. I think it's come at the exact wrong time. I think if it was any other 4 games that we've coming up, the next 4 fixtures, I would have zero hesitation about it. Do you know what I mean? I would just go, you put Alese in, you see what happens, we go from there. And ultimately, that is still my opinion to some extent because you put him in for the league game and then if it doesn't work out in Europe, you can make changes or whatever. But I think realistically, it comes down to me and I'm desperate not to make this a Moyes thing because I know there's a lot of people who would assume what I'm saying right now is when it's not. But... What the fuck? No. But realistically, I think you have to ask yourself a question of what's the point in having a youth team if he's not getting the opportunity? It's a very, very difficult situation because it's such an awkward position that, it's also awkward because Declan Rice can play there. And there is obviously almost always the temptation to just put him there because you're like, you can depend on him to play that role, which is exactly what you're saying, right? I just feel like really, ultimately, we have this kid here who, listen, other people will disagree with me on this, but when we played Zagreb, last one, and we hadn't played all those youth players, he was the one who stood out for me by a country mile. I know other people were talking about Longello and this, that, and the other. I looked at him and I was like, crap, this guy is ready now. Like, not to start every single game, but I want to see him integrated more.
But is it the right time, though, Charlie?
There's never going to be a right time. This is the problem. If he can't get in when 3 of our 4 first-team centre-backs are injured, when the hell is he going to get in? I agree with you. Like I say, if it wasn't Chelsea, Arsenal, the 2 Frankfurt games. If it wasn't that, then there would be no hesitation in any
I
of
think
our
if there's no
voices.
Frankfurt game, I would agree with you 100%. Play Alese,
Yeah.
because but I think with the Frankfurt game in between there, it's a semi-final, mate. We need our best players. Like, and he's not our best player. He's not even proven, is he?
But we also need our best players in the best position, and that means Declan Rice in defensive midfield.
Yeah.
I feel like, and this is a terrible analogy. I appreciate, but at some point you just got to throw the baby in the pool and see if it swims, mate. Like, and I feel like that's kind of what this is. You've just got to try
it drowns, and it's dead.
If it drowns, it drowns. We move, but no. But realistically, I do think there is an effort of like we can't. Similarly to how I get frustrated when Declan Rice is the one going forward and Thomas Souček sitting because that's not the optimal setup. Equally, I feel like restricting Declan Rice into that role when he is so much more. He's better. He's just a better defensive midfielder than he is a centre back. I think in those big games, when again we are going up against a very good team, if we're looking at it and then all of a sudden their midfield runs all over us and we just sit there and go, what if Rice was in that role? When we have a centre back sitting there who's doing really well in the under-21s, who's played in Europe and looked good already, I feel like if we're not doing it then when aren't we doing it? I know these games are as important as they're ever going to come for us. Like, I can't, in my time supporting West Ham, and certainly specifically covering it as like on doing YouTube videos and all this sort of nonsense, this is the biggest opportunity we've ever had. Like, it's just, there's not even close to this, right? But if you don't do it now, when do you do it? So for me, it's Alese. It has to be.
In terms of
Athers. Obviously, I think you're going to say Alese.
Charlie's time covering West Ham as an online journalist.
Writer, editor, host, just all round good,
just
dude.
extraordinaire.
Remind me to tell you the extraordinaire story after this, Tom. You'll enjoy it. Sorry, carry on.
Okay. So my point of view is, I'm sure Gary Neville somewhere would be creaming over the thought that Declan Rice could actually play at centre back, seeing as though that's where he believes he can play and should be playing. Two things for me is why I don't.
The Cheshire countryside just absolutely ham.
My man's mentioned it enough on Monday Night Football that he thinks his best position is at centre half. The two things for me is, one, it's not just you pull Deck back into defence, it's the knock-on effect that has on the rest of the team, because then you have to play a midfield three because you lose, I believe, so much legs in midfield that Fornals has to come centrally. That means all of a sudden you don't necessarily have that defensive work rate down the left-hand side from Fornals that we'd have if that means he pushes Benrahma into the middle and Vlasic out wide. Both of those we know are not as good defensively as what Fornals can sometimes offer you. Attacking-wise, yeah, fantastic. But I think large parts of Fornals' game is that work rate down the left, and I think you obviously lose that if you have to bring him centrally. I also think that Souček cannot do that role, or hasn't been able to do the role in midfield that we saw the season before. You lose so much of Rice's ability to, whether or not it turns into a goal or anything, those progressive yards and the ability to take the ball out of midfield. Souček doesn't have that, or at least he hasn't had it this season. And I think you lose so much of that prowess that Deck has in midfield if you put him back there. It's not to say that he can't play as a centre-half, because he can, but I don't trust our midfield and the impact that it has on the rest of the team if he goes back there. Secondly, I remember a couple of years ago now, we played Everton in, I think it was either the FA Cup or it was the League, or it was one of the things. I think it was the League Cup. And fair enough, the players are different, but we played Noble and Snodgrass as a midfield pivot, and we played Deck at centre-back in that game. And he was awful. He was awful. That is probably the worst game I've ever seen Declan Rice play, because he'd been so used. And listen, I know times have changed. He's developed himself as a player, but I think he's so comfortable with playing that midfield role now. To ask him to drop back into the defensive, I'm not saying he would make mistakes, but his game has changed now. He is less of the centre back playing in midfield. He's now the midfielder that would have to go back and play in centre back. I don't think it's.
I think it's a major risk, though, Tom, isn't it?
It is. Listen. It comes with major risk. But the one thing I would say is, listen, the 23s, second in the league, I think now. They were top for a while. I think they lost at Blackburn the other week, which put them second, only by a point or so. He's the captain of the 23s. He did come in. Yes, it was a dead rubber game against Zagreb, but actually, as Charlie said, was probably the best player on the pitch for us that night. Never once, other than that stupid shot from Orsic, never once looked troubled by anything. It's a different ball game when you're coming up in, especially in a semi-final. It's a big pressure situation. But if you can't, you have an academy for this reason, and he is a little bit older than some of the rest of them. Yeah. He's been out on loan, and I know what you're trying to say. And in any other circumstance, if this was at the start of the season or something like that, it may be a bit easier for us to say, just chuck Alese back there. A few games, we'll see what happens. It is very pressurized, but I just think the impact that it has on the rest of the team, and I don't like that so much. I think it's what you lose and having to move other pieces around to make it fit just to put Deck back there. I think that affects the team more than saying, right, let's stick Alese in there. And let's not forget also that he is actually a left-sided centre-half as well. He has... Listen, if Dawson was the one that went down and Alese had to play with Diop, Christ, we'd be in big trouble, I think. But the fact that it's Dawson that's back there as well, and you've got an older head, a veteran if you want, they're both English, can communicate quite well with each other. I couldn't imagine Diop doing that with him. It's not necessarily go and prove yourself, but it's like, right, I know what I have to do now. And let's be honest, he's travelled most weeks with the squad this year. He's been on the bench pretty much every single game for us. He's been in and around the team.
Is he ready though, Tom? Is he ready to put this man in and say, right, let's forget the Chelsea game for a second, because I think we all would agree the Chelsea game is really not important. All right, it's all about the Frankfurt home and away leg. Can you really put this man in a Europa League semi-final against players who are going to wind him up, get into him? This is not under 23s no more. This is proper high-end football, and say, here you go, Alese, you've got to go and do a job and hope he does well.
I think, do you know, and this is what annoys me, is because we didn't take... I said this when we spoke after the Lyon game, wherever it was. I said, worst team to play is Burnley, because they've got something to fight for. I said the week before when I was doing stuff on American Hammers, worst team to play after a European game was Brentford, because of the intensity they were willing to go to. Spurs, because of how they like to defend and put... It annoys me because those games should have been as important. You shouldn't have to rely on falling back on the Europa League, because if we get knocked out of the Europa League now, we're going to look very stupid if we finish 8th. So those games were so important at the time. So I'm annoyed at dropping points, because now we have to look at it and think, oh God, where are our next points going to come from? Those were as important games. And I know it's very different players and it's a very different time. But I still think of the likes of when players have taken that opportunity. And that's why I want to be positive about it, because Marcus Rashford, and I've said this a few times previously on different channels and stuff, he was never meant to play for United that day that Martial went down in the warm-up in the Europa League game. He scored 2 on his debut. He played Arsenal that same week at the weekend. He scored 2 again. He's now played 300 games for United. Some of these people, yes, you throw them in at the deep end and they don't swim. They drown. And I just think sometimes you have to take that chance with these players. And like I said, if it was Baptiste and he was our sort of next person up, and he was sort of 18 and he's not exactly filled out his frame, he's not played a lot of minutes in the first team and stuff. But no, I think actually Alese is probably the closest thing we've got to actually a ready-made centre-half in the youth teams that can step in. But I'm fully understandable in what you're saying, and it is such a high-pressured situation to put someone in. But we have to take it from the side that actually he may be relishing this as well. Yes, it's difficult for us because we can be panicking and think, oh God, we can, what are these going to do when we, they come up against a young guy. But on the other hand, we've got to try and say, well, actually, he's waited for this moment all season. He's been in and around. He may take that chance with both hands. We just don't know how it's going to work out. But I think the massive thing for me is just I'm worried about what we lose with Deck not being in the centre of the park. And I think it's where you have to move those pieces to make him fit. That is, we start to lose out on other areas.
That's the thing I was going to say is 2 things. The first thing is, doesn't matter if they try to wind him up. Does he speak German? If not, he's safe. Don't worry about it. They'd be all in there like that's dickhead blood, and he won't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, but I mean, like kicking him though, Charlie. I mean, kicking him. I mean,
yeah, but if they're not kicking him in German, then he won't understand. James, it's fine. Don't worry about it. The other thing is I don't think the argument should be who should play at centre back, Declan Rice or Alese, because I think we all know probably Declan Rice is the better centre back out of the two, right? I don't think that's I don't think that's even a discussion. I think the discussion really is if Declan Rice moves back there, then what fills that gap? So, for example, would you rather Alese get the chance, or would you rather Crowell get the chance? Would you rather? I'd
rather a three-man midfield. If I'm honest.
But this is what I mean. There's so many different permutations there, but the one that causes the least amount of upset is just putting Alese in.
Is Ben Johnson an option, Charlie? I keep seeing him getting...
Lob him up front, put Antonio at centre-back. Let's go.
Is he an option, Ben Johnson? For me, he isn't. I think like aerially, he's just not good in the air, and I think if crosses come in, then you've got a problem. Do you know what I mean?
I've seen people mention it, not for me. I'd maybe risk trying him in a back three, but I also don't want to see us going to a back three. I understand the argument as a fullback who's better at defending than he is going forward, but I'm also not Ben Johnson's biggest fan, so I probably shouldn't be speaking on it. I not for me personally. I really want to see us maintain the 4, and I think I would only risk him in a back 3, and then that would also mean a back 3 where I would still have to play Alese, because I don't want to see him and Aaron Cresswell in a back 3 together, because at that point you're essentially playing a back 1, and that seems suicidal to me. Because the situation
I'm more of the opinion if he didn't want to go with Alese, I would chuck Souček back there. I'd put it this way: which of the two midfielders would I rather play at centre back? And it would be Souček based on current form, because at the end of the day,
he just can't tackle though, can he? Though, Tom, that's the only problem with him. I agree with you partly, but I look at him sometimes. I think he just cannot tackle.
I think he's all right, but also centre backs make less tackles than they do in centre midfield. To be fair, but I think he's okay. It's not great, but he's okay.
That if Souček was in that midfield 3, those midfield 3 can't cover as much ground and with as much intelligence as Declan does, protecting that back 4. So if it is Alese that has to go back in there, it would be better served that Dec could be that protection as well, just that sweeper in front of the back 4, and I still think he would be more suited to doing something like that. If you said to him, look, we don't need your progressive yards as much here, but we need you to play as a sweeper in front of the back 4 to add cover for Alese, who may not be quite ready to play yet, and allow Souček to try and do what he did in his first season with us, or the first 6 months and then the next season, and be the one that goes further forward and stuff. I would rather that. I understand completely, and this is not me being argumentative. I understand completely why it makes sense for Dec to go back there, but I just think we can't start moving other pieces, because then we lose stuff in different areas, and attacking threat and that sort of or counter attacks or everything. And I don't want people to say, well, we have to change back now and go into a back 3 or a back 5, and because Johnson and Cresswell shouldn't have to play there. It's not their natural positions. You have a centre half in there. Listen, we've done it a couple of times previously. I know that it's not exactly worked out for Jeremy Ngakia, but he was thrown in against City and Liverpool. Ben Johnson was thrown in against City. You have to just sometimes take that risk. And
the only thing I will say though, Tom, I understand that. Listen, I totally agree with you, because on the one hand, you got a young progressing player who everyone's raving about, but we had this opinion on Mipo Odebecchio, and he's scoring goals for Doncaster. And the problem is you can't just say to this kid, turn up again
for Doncaster.
He scored 2 goals now, Charlie.
He got second. Big up the boy. Let's go.
He got a second one yesterday, mate. I'm just letting you know that. But listen, at the end of the day, we all had the hype on him. Like, he's banging goals in for the under 23s. We think he's going to come in, and let's be honest, he was like a rabbit in headlights. Listen, I'm not saying the Alese is bad, but I think it's a bad moment to try and bring this lad in and say,
"Oh, listen, it's never a good moment, especially when your remaining fixtures look like the way that ours do. It's never going to be a good time to sort of come in, and especially to fill the boots of Ogbonna and Zuma, let alone Diop. It's it is it's horrible for him to sort of even think, oh, I can reach that standard. But I think Dawson's been that good this season. Having someone maybe not as good or as sort of, well-rounded as the Zoomers and Diops, I think he can almost help Alese if he's playing that position. The only other thing that really pisses me off is I know we have to give him game time by letting him go out on loan, but this is really at the point where I wish that Connor Coventry was still hanging around that team, because if Connor Coventry was still here, I'd have no problem with sticking Declan Rice at centre-back, and I'd say, right, Coventry, you play Rice's role, and I think he could do that adequately and quite well, especially with how he's been performing at MK Dons, but that's something else for another day. But yeah, maybe that's just me, and, we all know Moyes just loves to fucking throw a curveball in, and he'll do whatever Moyes wants to do, and he'll think of some mad thing, and he'll sort it out how he wants, but for me personally, nobody can change my mind on thinking I'm worried about where we lose elsewhere in the team, and I'm just going to have to stick by that.
I think with the Meepo thing as well, I think it's not a one-to-one comparison. I think tactically it doesn't make sense. Meepo getting put in that game did not make sense whatsoever, because it tactically wasn't suited him. He's a goal poacher, and so then when you ask him to lead the line like Antonio does against, it's just not going to happen. This is a centre back. This is a totally different kettle of fish. This is a left-sided centre back for a left-sided centre back in a back two, which is what he's already playing. It makes perfect sense. Whereas, and look, if he comes in and he doesn't do well, he comes in, he doesn't do well. And actually, part of what makes me less scared about it is the fact that we don't have the Frankfurt game next. Mm-hmm. If the Frankfurt game was the next game up, then you might even see a little bit more trepidation in me. But the fact that we do have a Premier League game before that is at least we have a time to try it,
And as you mentioned that brings me on to my next question. Should he start him with Dawson at Chelsea? If he goes with him against Chelsea, then to me that really picks itself, doesn't it? He knows full well that he's going against him with Frankfurt. I think if he doesn't, then we all know Alese's not there. Like, whatever happens against Chelsea, I believe will be the Frankfurt defence, in my opinion. What do you lads think?
This is the really annoying bit, is because after such a tough game against Lyon, everybody was sitting there thinking, right, okay, we can maybe just chuck a few fresh things. We'll have Ben Rama starting, we'll have Vlasic starting. We may put Noble in against Burnley just to start the game or something like.
Yeah.
But he didn't. Moyes will stick to what he likes, which wouldn't shock me that Deck plays at centre half and it's Noble and Souček in midfield at the weekend. I could 100% see that happening. But I think that I've seen people on Twitter today speaking about, Ogbonna may be coming back from injury sooner and the end of the season. Can everybody just, for a start, just get that out of your mind? The guy's not played competitive football for 6 months, and you want to throw him in the Europa League semi-final. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Whatever decision he makes this weekend against Chelsea is likely to be the team that lines up against Frankfurt. And if that means that it has to be Alese, fair enough. I think the one thing that you would worry about is if Lukaku is fully fit and ready to play this weekend. I still remember Everton a couple of years ago, and that was the start of the demise of Reece Oxford, was because he had to be dragged at half-time because he just could not cope with Lukaku. Whether or not Lukaku's banging in goals, he's an absolute handful for you. Say he does start and he comes through that test, brilliant. Frankfurt don't have any big 6-foot lumps up front. I think they've got Ibore or whatever he's called or something.
Yeah.
Or Borre or something who's a very sort of nippy small striker, Kostic and that. So it's a completely different outlook to facing a Chelsea. But yeah, it's a big game if he can go in there and do well and prove himself, even if we lost and he still put in a good performance, And I always think to myself, the fans will never, ever, ever get on the backs of young players that come in and come from the academy because of what we are, what we've stand for in the past, and all the academy of football bullshit. I don't think the fans will get on his back. I think they realise now that we have to potentially look at that as a solution to our problems. And I don't see the fans getting on his back. Is all. I know Charlie's given that phase, but I just don't see it.
I think Meepo Debecker probably disagrees. But
okay, fair enough. If it was, but he was signed from United, is what I'm saying. At least he's been there for donkey's years. He's been there a decade plus. Like I just can't see them digging him out because it is a very tough situation. It's not like Man United in the Cup where go on and get us a goal kind of thing. It's like, shit, okay, he may actually have to play for the remaining 5-6 games of the season. Go and do your best. I just don't see him giving him the same.
I think people would pop off at him, but I don't think they would pop off at Moyes for picking him in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think no matter what, to be honest with you, I think no matter what Moyes does against Chelsea, I think people will back it. I think everyone,
unless you're East Side Views who wants Moyes burned at the stake.
Hey, listen. I might have some sympathy for East Side Views in general, but you know what I'm saying. I think it's one of those situations where you look at it and you just go, man, raw. Okay, good luck. And I think everyone would back it. I think realistically, if Alese comes in and has a terrible game, he'll get digged out just like everyone else does. But that's just the way these things go. I think what he'll do against Chelsea, I think we know what he'll do. I think he'll put Declan Rice at centre back. I think he'll play probably Mark Noble in midfield. He'll put, I think it'll be practically the exact same thing you expect it will be.
Do you reckon he goes 3-4-3, Charlie, against Chelsea?
No, I reckon it'll be the exact same. I think it'll be a four at the back. I think it'll be Rice and Dawson. I think ahead of him you'll see Noble and Souček. I think you'll see Lanzini involved in that, and then you'll have Fornals on the left and Bone on the right. I think it's as obvious and simple as that. I can't see him doing anything different. Moyes is, if not very predictable when it comes to the same thing over and over again. So I think it will be that.
Surely not.
I think we could. That's the thing, is we have all these conversations about what we could and what we should do and this, that, and the other, but I think it's as simple as that. What he does against Frankfurt is a different kettle of fish. But there,
I've got to ask you this question because Jazz has put it up, and I've been waiting to get this one in here. Right? He said, "Does this decision ultimately depend on Moyes' judgment on Alese, his ability, or Moyes' contentment to change things around by putting someone else there?" So is he going to be looking at Alese and thinking, like, if he doesn't put Alese in, people are crying for Alese, is Moyes looking and saying he just ain't good enough to start?
Well, I would say he's already sort of shown that many times this season by his treatment of Král and Vlasic, which is clearly either A, they're not good enough, or B, they're not ready. So he is a stubborn bastard. Yes, we all know that. He has his favourites. You would have thought that as he's been around the first team for pretty much the entire season on the bench, and obviously he played against Zagreb before, he's had enough time to look at him in training. But then again, the same thing is with Král and Vlasic. They've been around the first team the entire season, yet for either Moyes just doesn't rate them or he doesn't trust them or whatever, so there's every chance that he will go with Declan Rice because he trusts him. And that's, I think, what we've seen most of the season with his starting 11 choices, and the fact that he hasn't really chosen to rotate as much is because he has those favourites. So that's why what I say or what Charlie says or what you say will be completely different to what Moyes says. Moyes already knows, and he probably will play Rice at centre half because he trusts that choice. But as fans, we can sit here and say, well, I'd like this, I'd like that, I'd like that. But ultimately, the buck lies with the manager.
I just think Rice is
in response to what
Jazz
is saying.
But
This problem is what I'm saying is I agree with what Jazz is saying in as much, or his question when he says, on his Alese's ability. We have seen so many times this season when Král or Vlasic or somebody else could or should have played and hasn't because he doesn't clearly rate them as highly maybe as some of us do.
Yeah.
Off Tom Vlasic. But it's but we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding this weekend because, like I say, if Declan Rice plays at centre half against Chelsea, then it's probably that's what's going to happen against Frankfurt. I think that's completely true. The same as if Alese started at centre back as well.
What do you reckon, Charlie? Ability, or do you reckon Moyes will change it around because he just doesn't have the faith?
I was looking for free agents. Mara was all right. He's on a free, by the way. Not relevant to this conversation. Manager. No, I'm just looking at transfer market free agents.
Oh, right. Okay. Listen, bro, Carlos Tevez, he looks in great shape.
You see that video of him before, like going up to Carlton Cole, like, what a moment in life that was.
Bring him back, get him centre half. They do a job.
Why not? Just put him in there. You know what I mean? See what happens.
I've got the shirt ready. I'm waiting. His time has come.
Yeah, you ain't cracking it out of there.
No, I'm not.
Correct. The correct.
I did hold it and cry when I saw him the other day. But anyway, let's go back to this. Yeah,
let's go. That's the correct thing to do. I don't know. He'll do exactly what we expect of him. The thing is people. I think people read into his decisions on people like Krau and Vlasic and all of these things, and be like, "Oh, he clearly doesn't rate him. This, that, and the other." I just think he's stubborn and predictable. I just think he does with what he knows. I don't think there's much more to it than that. I genuinely think he could think Alese was the next big thing, and he still would rather play Declan Rice as centre back because he just knows what Declan Rice is.
Yes, it's a safe option. Isn't it?
It's safe. It's boring. It is what it is. That's just that's David Moyes, and I think that's just the way it's going to go. I don't think we can. I think the temptation is, and again in this setting, we will all read into what he does and make judgments off of that. But I think Ben Rama is a good example where if we were to make judgments on how he treated Ben Rama the first time around, then we would think probably something very different. Jarrod Bowen, when he first came in, struggled to get game time. If we made judgments on what he thought about Jarrod Bowen, then I think realistically he just goes with what he knows. And I think what he knows is Declan Rice. And
I think to quickly just piggyback off of that with Charlie, I think his mindset is just strongest 11. And if that means Dec being at centre half, so Fornals, Lanzini and Benrahma go back into the team, I think that's what he'll do. I think we've seen so many times when, as I've said before, when he had a chance to rotate and hasn't, it's always just been strongest 11. So if that means playing Rice and then dropping Fornals and Lanzini into the middle, and playing Benrahma, he's probably going to do that, and that's how I think he's been this season. Yes, it's stubborn, but yes, it's worked. But I think he knows himself how important, and I think this is what pissed me off about Dec's comment the other day after the European game, which is if you can't get up for a game like this, you shouldn't play football. Well, equally, you should have been up for the Brentford game and for the Burnley game at the weekend, but clearly you weren't. Those games mattered as much as, to me, the European games do, because of potentially falling back on having no European football next year if we finished 8th. So, I think he'll just go strongest 11, and that will mean Rice at centre half, and like I said, bring in Fornals, Lanzini back, and having Benrahma on the left.
Yeah, if Rice does go back, just to sort of come towards the end, if Rice does go back at centre half, is it a 4-2-3-1? Or is it a 4-3-3 in your opinions?
Oh God, he'll probably just go 4-2-3-1 as he usually does, for fuck's sake.
If it is 4-2-3-1, who partners Souček? Is it Lanzini or is it Fornals?
I'd like it to be.
Do you want to give Tom time to think? Do you want what I think it will be, or do you want what I think, or what I would want? Because what I think it will be is Mark Noble. I don't think there's any arguments about that. I think it'd be Mark Noble. What I would do, Alex Krau. He's the only person who exists in this team who's an actual straight up defensive midfielder. And if we have any hopes of again keeping Souček trying to find anything going forward and stuff while maintaining some form of defensive solidity, he's the only option. It would have to be Alex Krau from you.
He has got European experience. I'll give you that.
You put in Lanzini in there, you're losing out. You're putting Fornals in there, losing out. You're putting Noble in there, you're losing out. He's the only one. He won't do that. Again, he'll put Noble in there. I can tell you this now. And I'm not going to complain. I want to see Mark Noble play as much football between now and the end of the season as humanly possible. I'm not going to moan too much about it, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. What about you, Tom?
He's going to put Mark Noble in there, and he's just going to absolutely boss, was it 3rd or 4th in the Ballon d'Or with Jorginho and the rest of them, and he's going to school Kante, and and then he's going to unretire and play for another 10 seasons and piss me off. In the words of Kante,
thank you.
Which very much sounds like fuck you when he says thank you. Fuck you. Peter Osgood. If you've not seen that clip, please just go watch it. I agree with Charlie. I think it makes the most sense as well, actually. I'm saying they're dropping Fornals and Lanzini back. Yeah, probably not the case, because he has his, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't call it a, I can't think of the word. Fuck me, university educated. Agenda against Benrahma starting some games, which means he probably would play Fornals down the left again. So Noble makes the most sense. What would I hope he does? Again, as I said at the start, I hope it is Alese and that Dec stays in midfield and we don't said it so many times this season. Bend but don't break. I think breaking would be putting Rice back at centre half because of what you lose in the rest of the team. I don't think we'll see Alex Crowell. I don't think. Well, I mean, what we've seen him for 5-10 minutes in the Prem this season, and then one half of shit football against Kidderminster. So, my God, if he can't trust him against Kidderminster, he's not going to trust him for any other points of the season. So, yeah, it could go one of two ways because Chelsea, yes, they've won at the weekend. Yes, they can score a few goals, but they look susceptible. Fair enough. It's probably next year's Ballon d'Or winner in Benzema that, caused that downfall, but still they've looked susceptible. So I don't know. I think for me, the biggest game is the Arsenal game. I think that one is, it's going to be tough because it's right after a European game, and God, look how good we've looked this season after European games. But just don't lose by too many goals, I think, because the goal difference will hopefully be a massive part. And we, up until the Spurs game a couple of weeks ago, we'd actually looked quite good in terms of goal difference versus the rest of them. So if you're going to lose, let's just hope it's not by like 4 or 5. But yeah, I think Noble probably is going to be it, and that just makes me sad. So,
and the final question from me to you lads is: I've asked Charlie this first. Is that the end of Issa Diop at West Ham? No. Will you see him again in the West Ham?
Before Charlie, has he got 1 year after this?
I think he's got 1 year after this. Yeah.
Okay.
2023, I think.
He signed a 5 year, so whenever that will be.
2018, I think.
I will check right now for you.
Thank you, Tom. No.
Don't think he goes in the summer.
I think we've got too much to do. We've got to replace all these people who are leaving first. I think it's one of those things where, I think David Moyes is more likely to end up this summer with more centre backs than what he started with. I don't think he'll leave. I could see it happening. Don't get me wrong. I could see a case for it happening. But I think two things would have to happen in order for it to happen, and that would
2 years left.
Thank you. I think he'd have to. Oh, he might have had an extension on it, a year option. I think you'd have to have the right price get put in front of David Moyes, and I think you'd have to have the replacement ready. Because if David Moyes was looking for centre backs when we did have Diop, what's he going to do? Keep looking for more? I can't see. I think realistically, I think we're more likely to end up with more centre backs in the summer than what we started with, and I think that means this is Diop staying.
I'm not laughing at you, Charlie. I just the staunch East Side views on wanting Moyes to get the boot in the summer. It's
I know, Tom. You love it. What do you reckon, Tom? Do you reckon he's here next season, or do you reckon he's gone in the summer?
I think he stays. Simply because I think you've got even though yes, Ogbonna's coming back, you don't know what version of Ogbonna that is. That is a very nasty injury at that age to come back from. And if anything, this season probably has told him, shit, I may have needed 1 or 2 more centre-backs. Whether that be promoting Elise next year to get some more game time. I think James Tarkowski, as Jay Woods has said there, is probably going to be someone that he targets. I think if that's the case, listen, if somebody came along and said, I'll give you 10 to 15 million for Diop, and we replaced it with James Tarkowski, would I be bothered about that? No. I think, yes, Tarkowski has a few mistakes in him here or there, but he's a little bit more consistent than Diop.
He's just a better version of Dawson for me.
Yeah, exactly. He's another sort of type of that, and it would be great business to get him on a free. But I think the only way you can get rid of him is obviously if we signed. My ideal thing would be somebody like a Coletta Car and then Tarkowski on a free, promote Elise, you get rid of Diop, and then you keep Ogbonna and Zuma. All of a sudden, that looks a hell of a lot better, I think, than what it did. But it all sort of depends on what version of Ogbonna you get when you come back, and then whether or not somebody offers that money for Diop. And listen, what annoys me, I think, is it was looking really good for us because actually Diop all of a sudden starts coming into some form. Imagine he played out the rest of the season, he was in that form. All of a sudden, his price is, okay, we will take a gamble on you for 10 to 15 million. So it's a bit shit that
he's gone
that
the
is
way he
the
has.
case, if we were going to get rid of him, because all of a sudden maybe his price could have gone back up. But it all really depends. But I think, as we sort of said, I think like either the Kaleta or definitely the Tarkowski, because that just ticks every box known to David Moyes' brain. So, and also, someone said, Dawson's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. Plus, he's been carrying an injury. How long is he going to be out when he has his surgery? So, all depends. It really does next summer. But as you know, East Side views, where is our next points coming from? I don't know.
Chelsea, next question.
We get a point.
We're going to get 9 points against Chelsea.
It's going to be a madness.
They're going to see how much we clark them, and they're going to give us 6 more points than usual.
They're going
to be like, and I quote Premier League official, major clartage.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then, while we're on the subject, before we wrap up. What is your prediction for Sunday? What do you think?
Sorry.
Yeah, and lots of it.
To quote my good man, what was his face? What was he called for Clubber Lang? That was it. Pain. Pain. Yes, I think my genuine
Fred, bro.
overriding feeling. I think 3-1. I think would be optimistic at this point. It all depends because Antonio's got to pull his finger out of his arse as well. It's not just the defence; it's him as well. We looked absolutely just goal shy until actually Benrahma came on and actually tried to run at the back four. Unfortunately, end product at times wasn't great, but at least he looked to run at the back four and cause problems for them. So look, they've got their injury concerns as well. So especially in the wing back positions. So it'll be tough, but I think 3-1 would be damage limitation. Respect the point, obviously, but the less we concede and the goal difference goes down, I think is good for me. That's damage limitation.
Charlie, what do you reckon Sunday?
Nah, I like working it 4-0. 17-0. It's going to be a cool 14 games, 14 goals for your boy Ben Johnson from centre back. Mad. I don't know. I honestly don't know. You could tell me we'd win 1-0 and I believe you. You could tell me they win 4-0 and I believe you. I honestly could not tell you. I think right now we're all in the pits because of the Diop thing, and that is the eternal question. But do you know what? Honestly, I back us to win as much as I back us to lose in this game. So I genuinely do not have the foggiest. But that ain't fun. I ain't here to sit on no fences, So we'll put out a prediction, and it's going to be big. It's going to be bold, James. You ready for this? I want you to James, I want you to strap. Right, James, what I want you to do is get your hands out like this and just really grip some, right? Tom, I want you to do the same. Can we just everyone get ready for this big, bold prediction, all right? It's going to be 1-0. Don't know 2-2. No, I'll say 2-1 West Ham. Screw it. Back the boys. Let's go.
I think as well. The plus is it's been really weird at Stamford Bridge over the last 10 years for us, or even last sort of 6 years for us, because I remember obviously we ended up basically getting Mourinho on the way to being sacked when Payet first season when he came. Then when we played him at the Bridge and they had that stupid free kick from the outside of the box. That was a penalty that they gave. It should have been. And then we had the Cresswell 1-0, David Martin's heroics. But then we've also been slapped a couple of times there over
3-0 last year.
Yeah, it's weird. We've sort of had, and I remember saying the same thing when it was like, oh my God, David Martin's in goal. And then all of a sudden plays one game, the man's a cult hero for forevermore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's been a mixed bag at Chelsea, and we've won with worse sides.
They did get hammered. They did get hammered the last game against Brentford at home. They got absolutely tore a new one, really.
They don't have full capacity either.
It's an interesting one for me. I'll give my prediction on it. I think if he starts Rice, I think we can get a draw up there against Chelsea. I think if he goes with Elise, I think Lukaku will tear him a new one. If I'm being honest. If Lukaku's on it, he's fit and he's ready to go, I think he just bully Elise all over the gaff.
I'm screen capping it just on the off chance that he just murders Lukaku and he puts it a worldly performance, scores a hat trick.
Murks him.
I shall out you on Twitter.
Does him in.
Please do.
Wolves.
I know, feed me to the wolves, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. I want to thank you boys for coming on today. I really do appreciate your time for coming on, do you know what I mean? And it's a bit of blow, isn't it? Let's be honest. The opt-out is like...
Who'd have thought that 6 months ago?
If someone would have said that 4 games ago, not even 6 months ago, 4 games ago, that Issa's going to be out.
Hang on a minute. The comments, that green alien behind Tom was the same fate. The green alien? This is not a green alien. This is Yoda. How dare you?
Is he an alien?
I mean, listen.
Is he green?
Have a nose. I mean, welcome to the...
As he smashes...
Wow, look at you just destroying the
He doesn't have a nose because this is Maisie's chew toy. Like...
Yeah, but you're missing the point. Is it an alien?
No, he's... Well,
is he from Earth? Is he, or was he not born?
He was made in China.
Is he, or is he not a shade of green?
I'm looking down his rectum. It doesn't look good here, does it?
Love that from you.
Sorry, made in Basildon. Fair enough. Even worse.
Made in Basildon, Gordon Bennett. You know what I mean?
That's even worse.
London, New York, Basildon. There you go.
Dave Bart, Tatooine, Basildon.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, indeed. Listen, I want to thank you boys, as I say, for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Listen, thanks to everyone in the chat also for putting your comments in today.
Eastside views.
And including Eastside views, as always. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. It goes a long way. It helps me out greatly. And I'll be back towards the end of the week to see what Moyes will do. Will it be Alese? Will it be Rice? Who knows? Would it be even Moyes? Will he, like, I mean, will Kevin Nolan just like get his boots on and or Stuart Pearce and go at the back for a couple of games? Who knows? Well, I've got no idea. But we will find out on Sunday against Chelsea. It's going to be massive for us. And then next Thursday is the biggest game in West Ham's recent history by a country mile. So anyway, enjoy your Tuesday. Man United, Liverpool tonight. Big game for whoever happens there. And what's Athers got there? Always on mute.
You don't know.
Haaland's just agreed to the City move per David Ornstein.
Oh!
Shit.
Breaking news. Haaland's going to the City. Anyway, bye for now.